Hello and welcome to day 39 of our daily Bible reading. We are looking at Leviticus chapters 7 to 9 and Acts chapter 15 today. We have our final section of offering instructions, and most of these are pretty general about the total offering situation, but there's a couple of very specific personal instructions in there as well. The Jewish believers are not to eat any fat from the animals that have been offered, and they are not to drink or eat any of the blood. These are things that became enmeshed in the dietary regulations that the Jewish people have followed for many, many generations. After the instructions of the offering was done, we have the ordination of the priests, and the priests then start practicing the offerings. At this point, the glory of God appears, burns up the offerings, consumes the offerings, and the people cheered. Now, this isn't a section that we often read through because our eyes just glaze over at the burnt offering instructions. But it made me wonder, when was the last time I heard a body of believers in church or any gathering cheer for God? And it really makes me think, when should we be doing this? When can we be doing this? When can we be so excited about what God is doing that we are cheering? We're very good at cheering at sports games these days and maybe at music concerts. Can we bring back a sense of cheering in our worship services as well? Looking at Acts chapter 15, we start getting into the circumcision debate. Circumcision is a practice that goes back to Moses' law in the Jewish tradition, and all of the males are circumcised in the Jewish tradition. Jewish Christians, Jewish believers who become followers of Jesus, believe that circumcision should continue as a practice among the new Christian church, and there's a big push for this. Paul and Barnabas end up going back to Jerusalem to be part of the debate and the decision making of what is going to happen as far as the rules for circumcision. And I think it's very interesting as you read through the discussion that happens in the early church. One of the things that points out that Paul says is, are we loading down new believers with rules and regulations? And they point out that God has always included outsiders in the faith, especially when you read through the prophets of the Hebrew Bible. The agreement then that they come up with is to tell the new believers in the church who are not from a Jewish background that they need to be careful around any of the practices that are used for idols. They need to be moral in sex and marriage and not serve food that is offensive to the Jewish believers in the Christian church. Overall, people were relieved by this agreement, and I think for us today, we need to remember to look at this as a template for how we deal with the debates that we have today in the church. Do we get together? Do we carefully discuss this? Do we look at the whole arc of God's relationship with people through the Bible and apply that to whatever debate we have today? After this debate, Paul and a number of the leaders decided to start going back to some of the communities that they had visited where they had shared the message of Jesus to see how people were doing, to see how the new churches were doing. I think this is a really interesting thing for us to think about because, first of all, the debate, the information about how the debate was resolved needed to be brought to all of these people. And so following up with these early planted churches is a great way to reconnect with them, but also to share information, to communicate with them as far as some of the developing theology and understanding of what it means to be this church of Jesus that is emerging. But the other part of it is accountability. Do we go back and check on our churches, check on our believers to see how they are growing and developing in their faith? How often do we kind of throw people out and say, go have a great time after they finish confirmation or baptism or some Bible study, and we don't have a lot of follow-up? I think one of the strengths of the early church was this sense of encouragement and support where they stayed connected and they kept following up, checking in with each other to make sure that people could grow spiritually and become stronger disciples following in the way of Jesus with the strength and support and the framework for them to flourish. And I think sometimes today we kind of drop the ball on that. We do a couple steps here, but then we don't do such a great job on follow-up. So do you know someone who is a believer but is maybe kind of on autopilot. Maybe they've been stuck in a rut for a while, or maybe they're kind of floundering around like they had a really great experience, but then they're not sure about the next step in growing in their faith. Let's reach out to the people around us and make sure that we're encouraging and supporting them so that we can all continue growing with Jesus and being Jesus to our communities today. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much.